What's up, everybody? So this is going to be a competitive guide on one of the most dangerous setup sweepers in the game right now in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, the Psychic type Ostrich Espathra. So jumping straight into that pure Psychic typing, there's not a lot to talk about here. I mean, it's just pure Psychic. It's a pretty mediocre defensive typing. Offensively, it's okay, but a little bit worse this gen because there's just so many Dark types in OU currently, but I mean, Psychic is Psychic. There's just not like a ton to talk about with this. So let's just jump straight into the Espathra stats. We have 95 HP, which is actually like quite solid, but with the 95 HP, you also get 60 in the defense and the special defense stats, which is pretty rough. Even with a decent HP stat, Espathra is like relatively frail. The defenses are not good at all. We do have 101 special attack, but even 101 special attack is like pretty middling. 101 definitely isn't that strong. It could be worse, but 101 isn't like particularly strong either. 105 speed is pretty good. It's nothing special, but 105 speed is like pretty good. But when you look at the stats overall, it does leave a lot to be desired. Like when you look at these stats, this doesn't seem like the kind of Pokemon that would be like super strong. But getting into the abilities, we're going to start to see some of the reasons why Espathra is considered as good as she is. The first ability we have here is Espathra's signature ability, Opportunist. So the way Opportunist works is if any Pokemon boost their stats in front of you, you will copy those stats. So like let's say a Volcarona like quivers in front of you, you will also quiver. I think it's pretty situational though, because you don't get it on switch in. They have to actually be boosting their stats while you're out. I think probably the number one use for this would be in VGC, maybe against like Dondozo Tatsugiri, to copy that boost. But I say overall it's a pretty situational ability, especially when you get Speed Boost, which is one of the all-time great Pokemon abilities. Obviously, Speed Boost, the way that works is you get +1 speed every single turn. And you already have 105 speed, like we said, which is pretty good. But after a couple of speed boosts, you outpace pretty much the entire metagame and become unrevengeable with anything but priority. Speed Boost is definitely what I would recommend going like 99% of the time, especially because it also synergizes with Stored Power, which we'll get into in a second. The last ability that Espathra gets is Frisk. Frisk is like just not great. I would never really suggest running Frisk over either of the other two, but Speed Boost is going to be the one that you go like most of the time. Speed Boost is a big part of the reason Espathra is as good as she is. So I'm going to mainly talk about this set on screen and different variations of it, since this set and its variations are the reason that Espathra is considered a top tier sweeper in the OU metagame currently. So looking at it, we have Stored Power, which is the main damage option that we're going to abuse on Espathra. Stored Power gets an additional 20 base power on top of the like initial 20 for every stat boost we get, and for the first time we have Stored Power on a Speed Boost Pokemon, which means not only are we going to get faster and faster every single turn, those natural boosts are also going to feed into our Stored Power damage. In addition to that, we also get Calm Mind, which helps us get an additional 2 boost on top of that. So let's say we bring in a Espathra and Stored Power will be at its base of 20 BP. If we Calm Mind, we get a boost to our special attack and to our special defense, and then we get a free speed boost at the end of the turn. So that brings Stored Power from 20 BP to 80 BP, or effectively 120 BP after you factor in the fact that you're going to be at +1 special attack. If we do that again the next turn, we go from 80 BP to 140 BP, and then we're at double special attack, so it's effectively 280 BP. We went from 20 BP Stored Power to 280 BP Stored Power in 2 turns, while also getting speed boosts that makes us faster than everything in the metagame. This is why even with like a mediocre like base special attack stat, Espathra can still ramp up and snowball out of control extremely quickly. What a lot of people are using right now to combat setup sweepers are unaware walls like Skeledirge, Dondozo, Clodsire, and while they do ignore your special attack boost, so you don't ramp up quite as quickly against those Pokemon, they don't ignore the base power increases of Stored Power. So even those Pokemon you can eventually muscle through when your Stored Power is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. Unless they run something like Dark Terra Skeledirge or Dark Terra Clodsire, And those are like extremely uncommon. Unless they run something like that, even the unawares are not really counters to this Pokemon. Now, while Store Power can get ridiculously strong in a hurry, it doesn't matter if Store Power is 4 million BP. It will still do no damage to a Dark type. And like I said earlier, there's Dark types everywhere in OU right now, with like Tinglu, Grimmsnarl, Chien-Pao, Roaring Moon, Chi-Yu, Wo-Chien, King Gambit. Like there's a million Dark types in the meta right now. But our good friends at Game Freak were so kind and blessed Espathra with Dazzling Gleam. And Dazzling Gleam or Terra Blast fighting are going to be the coverage options that we look to run on our Store Power sets. So there's a couple things to think about when picking whether you want to go Terra Blast fighting or Dazzling Gleam. For one, this is a Pokemon that is going to want to Terrasilize like most games. You want to Terrasilize so your coverage moves actually have enough power to deal with the Store Power checks. And obviously, if you're going the Terra Blast route, you have to Terrasilize. Like it's not even you have to. So taking that into account, a lot of people prefer Dazzling Gleam because Fairy is just a way better defensive typing. Really, the only case it's not is if you're dealing with like Bullet Punch Scissor. Then Terra Fairy could actually backfire on you. But most of the time, like generally, Fairy is just a better defensive typing than Fighting or Psychic. The other reason people like it is even though you do want to Terrasilize a lot of the time, there are situations where you need to Terrasilize another Pokemon on your team. And even if you don't Terrasilize your Espathra, you can still click Dazzling Gleam. You know, it's not going to be stab boosted, but you can still click Dazzling Gleam. If you don't Terrasilize your Espathra, you can't even really use Terra Blast. It doesn't, you know, like you need to Terrasilize your Terra Blast. So if you don't want to feel forced into Terraing your Terrasilizing your Espathra, you might prefer Gleam as well. The good things about like fighting Terra Blast though is Fairy Psychic coverage does mean that you're going to need way more boost to deal with like steals. So fighting Terra Blast is generally better against steals, and it's just a stronger. It's just a stronger option against like like those Corviknights, those King Gambits, those Tyrannitars, and it hits pretty much everything that Gleam would hit anyway. The bad thing though is the most common steal in the game right now is Goldengo. That's the case in VGC and OU, and this is not going to help you with them at all. So that's another thing though. Goldengo alone might be a reason to go Gleam, but Goldengo you're probably going to want to hit with Store Power over any of the coverage options anyway. Fighting and Fairy do both give you like a Dark resistance, which is really good because a lot of people use stuff like Chien-Pao and King Gambit as like strong revenge killers for this thing. So if you like Terrasilize into Fighting or Fairy, either one, you get the Sucker Punch resist and you could remove them. I think mostly it comes down to personal preference. I think they're both pretty good. It might just come down to whether or not losing a Bullet Punch weakness is more important than like losing a Mach Punch resist or whatever. But like either way, you're always gonna run one of these two on your Store Power sets. Substitute and Protect are both options you can run. Substitute is better to abuse some defensive Pokemon and make it harder for some things to come in and potentially revenge you if you're like behind a sub. But I kind of like the consistency of Protect, especially against more offensive teams because it's pretty hard to get the sub off. Also, one of the best partners for Espathra anyway are the Shed Tailors, mainly Cyclizar, who can get you a free sub if you come in. And if you come in with a sub for free, you can like turn 1, Protect, get a free boost, then Calm Mind behind a sub, and then you'll get an additional 3 boosts because you get another speed boost. And then even if your sub gets broken after that, you can Protect again. So here you are with at least 5 free boosts that the opponent could do absolutely nothing about unless they had like Infiltrator or a move that went through sub or something. So I would tend to just run this with Shed Tail or Screens or something that like helps it boost up, and just run Protect. But once again, both of these options are good. Any combination of like Dazzling Gleam, Terra Blast, Substitute, Protect, like any combination of those is still going to be extremely threatening. For spreads, there's a lot of wiggle room on the spreads. You can run more bulk if you just want to set up on more things consistently. You could run more special attack if you just want to be stronger, faster. Speed on this one here, I have 144 speed because that allows you to outspeed Dragapult at +1, and Dragapult's like the fastest relevant Pokemon in the tier. But there's a lot of things you can do with the spreads. It's pretty flexible. I also have like 252 special attack with a modest nature here because that's just like the most powerful. Leftovers is the item I would recommend on pretty much any of these like Calm Mind Stored Power sets. You're going to be setting up for several turns, and this just gives you more longevity and makes it harder to remove you. And then obviously for the ability, Speed Boost is what we're going to be pulling up with on all of these. Here we have basically the same set, but it's like a little bit bulkier, and it has Roost. Roost is nice because this is like very hard to remove. Because a lot of the times it's like, oh, I'm just going to go into my Corviknight and just like Iron Head you a couple times because this thing's not that strong initially, and then just like you turn out into something that can pick it off. But if you have Roost, it's a lot harder to like wear this thing down. So Roost is an option for sure. Max Defense is also just like really nice because you could live some stuff like +1 normal Dragonite E-Speed. You'll always live with this spread. It's just nice for a lot of the like priority moves in general, which are primarily physical, and you're going to be Calm Minding to help on the special end anyways. So this set is a little bit nicer because it lets you set up on more things, because obviously naturally your bulk's not very good. So this helps. You have 32 speed on this set just because at +1 you'll outspeed like Meowscarada, Roaring Moon, and like pretty much all the Pokemon 123 or lower. You'll outspeed at +1, but like I said, you could even run a more offensive spread with Roost. Like, you have a lot of wiggle room with what you want to run with spreads. You have a lot of wiggle room on what you want to run with filler moves. Like, as long as you run like Calm Mind Store Power, coverage move plus filler move, like you'll be golden. As for Terra options, like we talked about earlier, Fairy and Fighting are just the two best. I don't really see any reason to go anything else. Even like Psychic is just like too greedy in my opinion. Just like Fairy and Fighting help this thing coverage wise and defensively so much. I think these are just the two to go with. Other moves you can go, obviously I haven't mentioned Espathra's signature move, Lumina Crash, which is actually a really good move. It's an 80 BP Psychic move that lowers the SpDef of the target by 2 stages. And that's actually really good because it makes it hard for a lot of Pokemon to consistently wall Espathra over time, unless it's something like Mirror Armor Corviknight or something. But this one, the reason I don't like this as much is because you're a 101 special attack Pokemon relying on an 80 BP move to sweep, and it's just not gonna happen most games. Like, Stored Power has a way higher chance of actually winning you games. Lumina Crash is not bad, and if you want to run like Specs Lumina Crash, you could also run stuff like Trick and, you know, other things too, and it's not horrible, but I think Stored Power is just going to win you games more often. For VGC, like, you could run stuff like Helping Hand because it's just way less likely you'll ever get to set up and do all of that in VGC. Like, I don't think like Calm Mind Stored Power Espathra will be a thing. Like, it's just not gonna happen. VGC is just way too aggressive for that. So Helping Hand helps you have some sort of like supportive utility in like matchups that are really hard for Espathra. So, you know, that's why I have that here as well. So at the end of the day, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Espathra long term, because I do think she's a big beneficiary of terrestrialization, screens being very prominent, like Goldengo, like hazard stacking HOs being prominent, Shed-Tail being in the game. Like, there's a lot of things about the metagame right now that favor Espathra. She's obviously a really, really scary setup sweeper, but it'll be interesting to see just how scary she'll be when some of these things, you know, maybe are removed from the metagame. Either way though, Espathra is definitely a great Pokemon. Definitely a Pokemon worth putting on your teams, especially your hyper-offensive teams in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet at the moment. And that's going to conclude this guide on her. But I'm going to have plenty of other guides on every single brand new Pokemon in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, as well as other content related to the game as well on this channel. So if you're interested in that, stick around, subscribe, like the video, you know, do all of that. And I'll see y'all next time.